See that video of Lloyd Cooper showing that Swifty board thing? Yeah.
No, I've not seen that one yet.
No. So he was showing that with he put a couple of like outtakes up on his stories. So he's just showing that there like that.
What's the quality of that?
Yeah. That gym looks it's like a really aesthetic, nice, isn't it?
Yeah, really nice. Like I love about the scrambles in the back of it as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. To going over.
Yeah, it'll be great to sort of film and see the new place as well. Episode 43 now, isn't it?
I don't know, I think we said 41 last week, and I put 40 on the video. So let's just pick a number from today and then go forward with that. Does it sound? Yeah, I bet it's more accurate on Spotify, isn't it?
Yeah, I think 40. I remember. I think it might have been 43 when I read the title up. Was it last week's?
Well, it's on YouTube. It's 40, but I can change that.
The running joke of getting the numbers wrong.
Right, so you've done 36 twice.
Oh,
yeah. Then it went 38 and then 40. So it's on track. So, but I think last week's, I think it's missing one.
Sorry, it might be. I think it might be the format for the audio. I'll adjust it.
So that was for the week before, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Last week's must have been 41. So this week it must be 42.
Yeah. So yeah, we are 40. Yeah. 42. Pretty sure. Have you got Apple Podcasts?
Yeah. I don't know what got it. I've got 5-star rating, 1 rating.
Well, 41's gone up, but it's episode 4 on the actual website.
So it goes 36, 36, 37, 38, 44.
Great.
Hey, professionals.
That's my. I think about the format that I put up, I have to change the format of the audio for Spotify. But yeah, episode 42. Then is it? Let's go with 42.
Depending on where this video ends up getting cut in at, we were just having a 3-minute conversation about what actual episode we're up onto.
So I am half debating just going straight from the.
Yeah, fuck it. We should just start doing it from the point.
No, that's races.
42 today.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. Yeah, welcome to the Grapplers Academy, episode 42.
42.
The most professional podcasting grappling.
Yeah, a few changes this past week, hasn't there? Everyone's seen a few places fully open, a few places semi-open, and a few places still waiting. I think some are waiting until May. But yeah, it seems like everyone's back training something anyway in the gyms.
Yeah.
Which is great to see. And I've got to say, I was feeling rough last week. I just had to actually get some proper workouts in. Good rough though.
So you guys down at Hive are doing what sort of classes are you guys doing now?
Solo workouts and conditioning style classes at the moment. Just trying to keep everything within the guidelines, but I want to get everybody into the gym. Yeah. So we've got set times, and they can come in and use the weights area for just workouts on the board, and then within their own bubbles, they can come in and drill. But we're not sort of doing any rolling just yet.
Yeah, and then I'm on, so me down at Flow, we've not opened yet. We're just going to open fully back up whenever it is in June. I think the 21st. And then I'm sure we all know of clubs that are doing fully everything.
Yeah.
Some behind closed doors, some don't give it a shit and just posting it up.
Oh, I've seen some places putting videos up, and it's like, I just want everyone to be careful, because the last thing I'd want is a club to get a hefty fine and get in trouble. Like, if you are trading, just be very careful. Like, just keep off social media and just keep doing news. Like, we know everyone's got businesses to run and everyone's trying to survive this sort of going away from the pandemic.
Yeah.
But the spotlight's still on us, especially with gyms, with all the issues that were brought up with gyms over the last few lockdowns. Just be careful. Like, the last thing I'd want is to see anybody that, it's a very close-knit community. Last thing I'd want is anybody that we know getting a fine.
Yeah.
Because the size of the fine is potentially business crushing.
And the other thing as well about the sport, it doesn't look good from an external point of view. Like, you know, people are worried about going to see the grandma and giving her a hug, and then you go on social media and you see 25 guys and girls in a room grappling. You know, it just doesn't look good, does it?
No.
But on a more positive note, like we were talking about last week, actual gyms are back open as well. We had the first full week now. And it was coming up on the YouTube, actually. I don't know if you've seen it yet. The guy said he was listening to the podcast after he'd gone nuts in his first workout. and was feeling the DOMs, shall we say. So, like, he said he basically wished he'd listened to it. I said late advice is better than no advice.
Well, that's it, yeah, better late than never.
It's a double warning for next time, but I've not been feeling too bad. I mean, basic kickstart of my reps is 5 reps is cardio. Where I'm at the moment. Like, I'm assuming you've got back in here this week before as well.
Yeah, been doing a bit more high volume stuff. What I enjoy at the moment, and with just sort of like the gyms are busy, so it's tougher to get hold of a large amount of weights. So I'm just sticking to lower weight, higher volume, just trying to get my cardio back up because I am feeling slow and out of shape.
I think we're going to feel when we get back to actual rolling.
That's the plan. Like, try and get in some sort of condition prior to getting there, and then my ego can take a bit of a lesson with that.
Yeah. I think on that first roll back, I'm going to feel like a drunken guy having a fight in a kebab shop where the floor slippery as hell. I'm stumbling around like a drunken bear. I'm not expecting anything. I'm going to get the camera out for it just so I can film it to see how bad it looks.
Definitely. Thing as well, like, it's going to be middle of the summer, super hot day. Everyone's going to be sweating out all the beer that they're consuming and just everything. So it's just going to be, I think it's going to be great.
It's got to be a geese session then, hasn't it?
Don't swear at me.
You had an interesting question brought up by somebody this week, speaking of getting back to training, and you were saying about well, I'll let you explain it, but the difference between like flashy submissions and the basics.
Yeah, so it is a theory that I try and sort of train with and sort of develop my own skill set with, but it's not something that I've vocalized and such. Because I've always been a fan of, when you're learning something new, you get really good at one side, and then it makes it easier to transfer the skills to the other side. But like, everybody needs one good technique on each position on both left and right side to essentially get them back to zero. And when I say get back to zero, that's getting back to a neutral position that you can attack from and you can defend better from. So, like, having a strong side control escape for your right side and your left side, having a good sweep from your left bottom half guard to your right bottom half guard. Do my hands in. That's it, yeah, we'll pad out right.
You're doing it for the viewers.
Doing it for the viewers. And then having like your fundamental good escape for mount, your fundamental good escape for back to both sides, like to your choking and non-choking side, and having, I say, at least one go-to technique for each of these defensive positions. And then, so when you are stuck where you're playing your A game, you can draw that out of the back pocket and be like, I've got this. Mm-hmm. And then when you want to develop other areas, you can afford to play be a bit more creative with it, knowing that you've got this here in your back pocket. And I was just sort of talking about it last night, and I was like, because when I go for passes. I've got good passes. I've got better passes to my left side, to my right side. I've got better. I've got different passes in open, closed, and half guard on different sides. So it all kind of differs side to side for me.
I think the old joke about jiu-jitsu as well is like when you've been doing it for a little while, people joke about, I'm going to complete it on my right side first and then go back and learn how to complete it on my left-hand side. And then the actual difficulty is, as daft as it sounds, that you've learned the move, you should be able to apply it left and right. It actually is a lot more difficult to switch your brain. It's almost like an analogy that people can easily draw on for this one is just like brushing your teeth with the opposite hand from what you used to.
Yeah.
It's a lot more difficult to do it when, you know, without thinking about it, and just your automatic muscle memory and reaction. You drill on the same side. Most people are right-handed, they're going to pass in a certain direction, so you get used to it, and you get used to a certain look and seeing it a certain way, don't you? I think another good thing about what you were talking about as well is having that card that you can kind of pull out or go to, is that when you are trying to learn a new position or develop some skill in a new area, if you've got a go-to technique that's kind of yours that you've taken ownership of a little bit, it'll help you understand those other positions better from a fundamental point of view. So, like, let's just say you're trying to develop a good DARS. I'll just use the one that I started off with. So you started off with a good DARS, you're trying to learn it maybe from side control, or you're trying to learn it from half guard or something like this. If you get a good basic understanding of how that technique works and you can see it in different positions, it starts to open up your possibility of doing it from a different area as well. And then it helps you understand the different position better. So you can see, if you take jiu-jitsu, it's like you can turn it any direction in 3 dimensions, where you can essentially almost apply every technique from top, bottom, and side, can't we?
Yeah.
And that idea helps you expand your overall knowledge of how the positions work and how you can apply the same ideas in a different situation. Because very rarely in a role or in a competition are you going to be presented with, oh, this is how we drilled it, so go.
Yeah. And it's one of them as well, like you say, you start, once you know the move inside out from your preferred side, you start seeing the opportunities everywhere, and then you start being it's easier to catch it on your wrong side, but if you're trying to learn them both at the same time, you're kind of stunting your development, because for me, I always look at it as my brain wired to do it this certain way, and then I need to master it this side to then be able to rewire and learn how to do it the other way.
Yeah, I think there's that point as well. It sounds like super fucking cliche, but the bit where like Neo just sees the fucking code of the Matrix.
Yeah,
like and it is true. Like once you start seeing it and see how the basic mechanics fit in of whatever you've chosen move or submission is, you can see it everywhere.
Yeah,
and it's just like, right, literally all I need is that little gap underneath the armpit and I can go. And it's like the curtain drops and you can just see, and it just opens your possibilities up.
Yeah, it's like there's a channel that I watch, or I used to watch quite a lot. The guy's called Ulma Fight Camp, and he was talking about why like judokas and wrestlers win in a more dominating fashion as opposed to jiu-jitsu players. And he starts off with the way that they actually go and compete, and it's they're less passive. So when they actually get a step ahead, it snowballs because of the momentum that they can generate for themselves. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, everyone's very happy to sort of play guard. But then he also said it's the way in which they learn new techniques. So in, say, wrestling, you learn a single leg. You learn that as a template, and you can fit that template to any part of the body, but also any scenario. You learn the template, you learn the basics, and then you go and learn and play how to apply it into different scenarios. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, a lot of people get taught techniques, so they don't, like a lot of I have noticed a swing in the way coaches coach now, but there's a lot of older school coaches, but also there's still quite a few coaches doing it now where they'll teach a very specific scenario for a submission or a technique, as opposed to teaching the sort of the foundations of what makes that technique work.
Yeah.
So for me, an example of it is, like you say, the head and arm choke. I use hip and knee pin pass for open guard, and when I teach it, I will teach the basics from open guard, but then I'll also say this is a template and here's an example of where else you can find it. And it's here popping up from half guard, combat base, boom, you can use it there. Someone stronger than you bench presses you from side control to pull the knee in, you resort back to that framework for that pass. I'm trying to teach, I always try to teach everything as a template now since watching that video. And it's sort of like I think it's a great way for people to look at the sport more. Like, even if not necessarily you're a coach, but as a practitioner, trying to learn techniques in the same way. So, okay, this armbar works here, great, but what makes it work here, great? Okay, so I've got the arm here, pinched it here, my knee pinch, my angle of my body, this is what makes this work, so where else can I find it from? And then it allows you to basically airlift that template and apply it to the other side of the body, but then also be like, okay, if this armbar works here, the leg is just a bigger arm. Would the same mechanics not work for a knee bar? And then, like I said, that's when you get the whole Neo seeing the Matrix thing. You see opportunities in a much broader scope now because of just the way that you look at a technique as a template, as opposed to this triangle fits here, this armbar works here, this works here, this works here. So then if you can't find it there, you're like, shit, where do I go? Whereas if you know how it works and how different things work, you can apply the same mechanics but to a different scenario and find a great submission from somewhere that you've not necessarily seen it there before.
Yeah, I think that comes down to as well, like, how simple can you understand, how simple can you break down the concepts? Like, what are the smallest building blocks that you can put together for a specific technique that applies to everything? And like, when you listen to people who've been practicing jiu-jitsu for like 25 years, 30 years plus, you basically just break it down to a couple of really small points. It's like space and pressure.
Yeah.
And like, obviously their level of understanding of the sport is so much so that they're not necessarily probably even thinking about it in terms of techniques. It's just like space and pressure on this limb, on the neck, to pass, to not let somebody pass, to control them. So like, I really like that idea of what you're saying. Like, what is the most basic form of the concept you can break it down to that you can apply it to everything? Because that's got a much bigger carryover than I know this armbar from Mount.
Yeah.
Like, well, now you're on your back, what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
If you don't understand the principle of the mechanics, you're fucked.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to apply it because you've just been flipped 180. The one thing that I will say though about judo and wrestling is, and this is what I think the difference is for jiu-jitsu, in judo or wrestling, there are a limited amount of ways that you can win. It's like pin-up points, pretty much, isn't it? And those sports kind of favour aggression and kind of dominance. Like, here's a good example of somebody who does it with like counter wrestling. Like Jordan Burroughs is a great example of a counter wrestler. Wait for you to attack and then re-attack, or like a double attack, so like kind of fake and then snap down and come back in. And that's where I think having those ideas, like you said, about drilling, and learning it as a concept works well, because the possible ways that you can win a small, it's like double leg, single leg, snap down, back take, all these sorts of ideas. And it's kind of similar to judo, isn't it? Like, there are a lot of techniques, but there's only a handful of ways that you can win. Yeah. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, you can win with passivity. Yeah. You can use your opponent's techniques against them. You can pull guard. You can play off your back. You can win with leg locks, heel hooks. You can win on points. You can hold a position. There's so many different ways that you can win. But I still like the idea of what you were saying about applying those concepts to jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Because if you could do that, with all those possibilities of ways to win, then you've got way more potential.
That's it. It's like going back to the example of the darts. That is essentially a triangle choke with the arms, but for some people, that sentence that I've just sort of said then could be like, it's a light bulb moment going, oh yeah, it is. Because the darts is arms applying pressure to the side, chest is applying pressure to the shoulder, which applies pressure to the neck, cutting off the blood, there's your choke.
Yeah.
Now, to talk about the darts in a more fundamental base, it's just a head and arm choke, but at a different angle. And then if you look at it that way, then it just puts the head and arm choke as the sort of top of the pyramid. And then underneath that you can have, okay, triangle, darts, head and arm, or mounted head and arm. And then from there you can be like, okay, these techniques now split off into other techniques and other techniques. It's just a full trickle down effect. And then it also helps you find unconventional entries and finishes using the same thought process. So a lot of people get the triangle from the guard or open guard, they'll latch it on. But then if they're at an angle where they've got one arm trapped and the head trapped, they can tie their legs up, apply pressure to the neck, and then if they apply pressure to the shoulder into the neck, there's potential for getting a tap there because they know the fundamental mechanics of a head and arm choke, whether it's applied with the legs or with the arms.
I think like a player like that as well is really difficult to deal with because let's just say, let's just use a darts for example, continue with the darts or whatever, any submission, guillotine's a good one as well. If you know that player's got a good guillotine, like you're going to be afraid of getting caught with it, so you're going to be more cautious of it, but not only just in like a close guard position, because you know that they can get it from everywhere. Yeah. So it turns every position into a threat. So you get a little bit more on the defensive mode because you don't want to stick your neck out because you know they're going to latch onto it if there's an opportunity somewhere. So it's a plus and it's a pro and a con actually, because when you are that person with a good technique, people know that you're going to go for it, so they're going to defend it. The plus side of them defending it more is you see better options of defences, so you get better at attacking it. Yeah. So it's a virtuous cycle of your training partners get better because they know what you're going for. They learn the mechanics of your attack, so they get better at defending, but then you get better at attacking. Yeah. And it's just a continuous step forward, isn't it? It's like an arms race. Can I get better at attacking quicker than you can get better at defending? And it might be a case of like, I get you for 3 weeks in a row, and then if I'm not better, I don't tell you what I'm doing. Yeah. And you've got to figure it out by yourself, like, I'm just doing this with the chin, like, I'll clear that. I figured it out. So now what am I going to do? Right, I need to do this. And then I might get you for a couple more weeks, or maybe I go for a month without getting you because you figured my one thing out. Yeah. It's a bit of an arms race, isn't it? Yeah. Like, you see that all the time on the mats, and it's great. I love it.
Oh, that's part of the allure to it, because you're constantly trying to one up your mates in a competitive, non-threatening manner. And a lot of the times you can push your ego to the side and actually sit there and enjoy the learning curve with it. Yeah. And then a lot of the times, like we've had it before, where it's kind of like, oh, I'm trying to do this, and then you might say, oh yeah, I recognise that, and that's why I was doing this to defend it. And then be like, okay. So then in that conversation, I go, well, if you do that to defend it, what would happen if I do this? And then that's when you get through those plateaus. But then also the person who's defending has got like, okay, now I need to add one more step to my defence because they're more aware of it. But then when it comes to rolling with somebody who might already have that next step to their offence, or even 3, 4, 5 more steps to their offence, you're preparing yourself for that role or even competition.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point as well, isn't it? Because like sometimes you can train with your main training partners, and it works both ways. So you might think you've got a shit hot guillotine, but maybe you're not getting it for a couple of weeks because your training partners have figured that thing out. And maybe that's what you think for 12 months, like you've been developing that. So you've actually got a pretty good guillotine, but you're not getting it a lot because all your training partners know. And pretty much everybody in the gym's got a good defense on guillotine because you go in for that all the time.
Yeah.
You take it to an open mat or to a competition, and maybe that gym doesn't have a guy who's got good guillotines, and it's just like a hot knife through butter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or inversely, you can go somewhere that's got like excellent guillotine defense, and you're like, fuck, I'm not getting this or anything, and they're just clearing it off immediately at the first point of notice of the guillotine. So, you know, you go to those gyms and you can see sometimes the sort of style of play that gyms have got by how easily they're able to recognise defences on stuff or like early warning signs on attacks. And it can either be frustrating or like a nice little pat on the back, like, you're doing something pretty good here.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've been in that position as well, where you're training with your main training partners and you're not getting something for a long time. You're like, am I getting shit? Like, what's going on here? But you take it away to somewhere else and you get it, and you're like, yeah, it works. Yeah.
And it's one of them as well, like, because you kind of disregard your training partner's progress when you feel like you're not progressing yourself. And it's like, we all do it, and it's kind of like a thing we have to remind ourselves with all the time of, yeah, my progress might not be as fast as I want it, but that's only because everybody in the same room is learning at a similar speed to me.
Yeah.
Whereas if I go elsewhere and put my A game on a gym where they don't know it, then I will see a good measure of progress. And it's very easy to overlook that side of your training, isn't it?
Yeah, it is difficult, and it's that small 1% sort of thing, like the incremental change that people have week to week. And you're right, everybody's developing at a fairly similar rate. You know, like somebody in the gym might have a slightly quicker rate of development for a couple of weeks, but then, so it's just like an arms race, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I like it, that's why it's addictive.
Yeah.
Like if jiu-jitsu is just a static thing, like I've learned the arm bar, I'm going to win every time that I go for an attempt to an arm bar, it'd be boring.
Yeah.
Like you'd be pretty dangerous to people who don't do jiu-jitsu. But if it was just a stalemate and nobody could improve and nobody got any worse after you learned the one thing, it'd be boring and nobody would do it and you wouldn't be excited to go and do it.
No. And it's also the state of, because there will be a point where you and your main training partners are at a stalemate. That's when you got to look at each other and be like, we need to play out your games here.
Yeah.
So if you're primarily a bottom player and they're primarily trying to pass your guard and whatnot, it's time for to switch roles. You start passing their guard, you start trying to hold them down and attack the top position on them, and put yourself in an uncomfortable position. And you're going to be shit for a few weeks, maybe even a few months, but it's a small price to pay for progress.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a perfect example of being that guy. I don't think anybody in my gym had seen me pull guard for 3 years, for the first 3 years of jiu-jitsu. And then I had that realization, like, probably pretty late on after 3 years, making that realization. It takes time sometimes, doesn't it? Kind of like if you're an idiot, like me, you'll just bash your head against the brick wall. Like, why am I not getting any better? Why is this not working?
You're still going to get through the walls.
You might get through the walls, or you might have a sore head and a sore neck, but it depends how stubborn you are with it. But two things, like as soon as I started playing that guard game, one, I got a lot better at it very quickly because I was getting smashed all the time, because one, I was terrible at it, and two, that meant I was getting a lot of practice with people who I'd ordinarily beat. They were having a good opportunity to like put some of their game on me, and it was great. Like I loved it. Like I purposely went out of my way to do it because I was having roles where I could be fairly dominant in them if I chose to be, but then got a lot more out of it in terms of my own development for playing the guard or pulling guard and being a bit more passive. Going back to what we were saying before about jiu-jitsu can be played many different ways.
Yeah.
But like not only my rate of development improved from that, everybody else has improved in the gym because now they're getting a different look from me and other people also. Well, I can play that, like and they're getting an opportunity to play their top game when ordinarily they might not necessarily get to. They might be in turtle or on the back. So it's great. Like we always talk about on here. Check your fucking ego at the door. It's not about winning all the time. And yeah, I've been there and done it. Like everybody's done it. Don't you know? I think a lot of people would be lying if they said that from day one of jiu-jitsu they were humble enough not to want to win.
Oh, of course. It's one that, like, when someone is kind of at the top of the gym, so to speak, how often do they get the chance to defend? So when actually, yeah, they might be great and offensive and beating everybody else in the gym, when they meet somebody who's similar or above, and they're forced to defend, they've got zero submission defense, zero, well, I won't say zero, but minimal submission defense, minimal positional defense, and also minimal like mental toughness, because they've not had to endure those horrible rounds. So it's kind of like, even if you are top of the pecking order, put yourself in vulnerable positions. Like, let your partners take you back. Don't give it to them on the plate, but make them work for it. But then also, it gives you the chance to work from a really bad position, as well as allowing them to develop their skill set in taking the back, for example, and attacking from the back.
Yeah. I don't know how many of those sort of guys there are out there. I'm sure there's plenty of people on both sides of the coin. But if you are that person who's basically smashing everybody in every round, regardless of how high or low your skill level is, like, go and let somebody put a submission on you that you think you know pretty well, and then find out how shit you are at defending it.
Yeah.
Because you might be great at applying it, but if you've not been on the receiving end of it 1,000 times, I tell you what, they're going to have a way better defence of it than you are.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be learned from those training partners that you might put a beat down on week in, week out, because they've got a really good defence of your submission. Like, you've seen that look a million times, like, you felt the pressure. And if you're not a complete dickhead to them and they're willing to give you some advice back, like, oh, like, this is how I defend it. Or, you know, when you're doing this to me, this is what I do. And it works both ways. Like, you've got to look after your training partners. I think the number one thing that you can do is have a good relationship with your training partners. Because it works both ways, and it's the only way that you get better. Like, you can't do jiu-jitsu by yourself.
No. If you can.
You're a 10th planet player.
Yeah, I started thinking, like, it wasn't Nathan Orchard, but I saw a video where somebody put themselves in, like, a 10th planet position, like they triangled themselves or something.
It's got to be a 10th planet player. Yeah. No disrespect to 10th planet.
Yeah, I know, it's a great system.
I ain't got the fucking flexibility to do it.
But yeah, no, I think on that note, make sure you hit us up on all the social medias. Bonafide PT, coached by Si, with the Grapplers Academy. Keep your eye out now. There's going to be a string of new techniques coming up, starting off with some submissions. So if there's anything you want us to address or cover, drop something down in the comments, drop us a message, and we'll do our best to cover it.
Any other topics of conversation for the podcast as well? Like, this was an interesting one that just got brought up out of the blue.
Yeah.
We might have gone off on a bit of a tangent with it today, but it all is beneficial, and I enjoy sitting down and talking about it and hashing out those ideas as well. So even if you think it's a stupid question or like might not be beneficial to anybody but you, drop it in the comments and let us know, because it might be a really good topic of conversation for people to hear.
On that note, see you next week, guys. Spot on. I'll put the thumbnail up. So continue recording.
Yeah.
I'll put the TJ thumbnail over it.
Yeah.
Or what I can do is I can crop the starting video and just have that on loop.
See if anyone notices. I'm sure nobody will notice.
Nah.
Except from when, like, I go, ha!
Turn the camera on there, like.
What are you doing now?
Good after, I think I've got one dog this afternoon. I think Nicole wants to go for a coffee or something. She's got 2 weeks off, and I'm kind of like, I do want to see you more, but at the same time, I've got to work.
Yeah, you don't understand, my business has just opened back up like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, go probably say to her if she wants to go for a walk with the dog, grab a coffee and go for a little wander. Yeah. I need to get a soft bristle brush, just like they sweep the white rose pubes.
Everything on that matters my day.
So I didn't realise how bad it was until like the light was coming through the blinds onto the mask. I was just like a field of them, and I was like, Shit, everyone sheds. What about you? You got much on?
I'm going to go and see if I can pick up this table and chairs now for the garden. See if I can get there. Maybe just before 2.
Yeah.
And then I've got some like horse stall mats. Horse stall mats for the garden.
Oh yeah.
I want to stick that squat stand up.
So heavy. Listen to them.
Yeah, there's probably loads of them. Like stack this high, or 2 stacks like that high basically. Or like they're probably like this.
Are they the 6x4 foot ones or are they
It's just rubber flooring that's been cut up.
Ah, okay.
So I have to kind of try and piece it together a little bit. But some of them